Okay? The problem with what's presented here is amortization interest cost. Amortization is basically like the whole life of your mortgage. But this isn't an or type of a question. This isn't a I pay that much interest or I pay this much interest. Because when you get a mortgage, you're only locked in typically for like 5 years. 5 years is the most common. You can go like 1, 3, 5, I think as high as 10. And that would be the term of your mortgage. So at the end of that period, this is important because at the end of that period, you need to go to the bank and like, I can't remember exactly what the term is, but it's like basically you need to renegotiate your mortgage. Or, sorry, getting a blank. You need to go in at new rates, whatever the rates are today, and redo it for another 5 years or however long. So this amortization interest cost assumes that you're paying this interest rate for the 25 or for the 30 years, which is not the case in Canada. Like you can't, there's not, no one can guarantee you that. So this is more of an and question, because it's like you get this rate for 5 years, and then you get whatever happens after that, whatever the rates are for that day at the end of those 5 years. So I read a really interesting example that I'd like to present to you that I think will give you like a really good understanding of how significant the 1% change in interest rate is to 11% change in your ability to pay for it. Okay, that's the rule of thumb that the mortgage broker gave me. So let's say you got a mortgage for that was, let's say you paid $2,000 a month for this mortgage. It's the most that you can afford. Okay, you go to the mortgage broker, they say, yeah, we can give you that. We can give you that mortgage with a $2,000 a month payment at 4.25%, 35-year mortgage, okay? Now, you're going through these 4 or 5 years. Property values have been pretty flat. These 4 and 5 years, you're paying it off really quickly. You're never late on your payments. You know, you're always making it. Money's a little tight because even though your income's gone up, so is the cost of living, so is food, so is your taxes, so is maybe your strata fees if you bought a condo. But you can pay that $2,000 bucks. It's no problem at 4.25%. Now just imagine for a second, the day before you go to renew your mortgage, that's what it is, renew. The day before you go to renew your mortgage, interest rates shoot all the way up from 4.25% to 4.8%. Okay? They've changed a tiny amount. You go to the mortgage broker the next day and you're like, I need to get a $2,000 a month mortgage because even though my income's gone up, it's the most I can possibly get. I am stretched super thin. And it shot up 0.65%. You know what the mortgage broker will say to you? They'll say, okay, let me just crunch some numbers here. No problem. 35-year mortgage. That's just what you got. And you say to him, wait a second. I had a 35-year mortgage 5 years ago. Are you telling me I have to go back? I'm starting from basically the beginning, square one. It's only gone up 0.65%. What the heck? Well, that's where this comes in, principal. The amount that you're building in equity over the first several years of your mortgage is tiny, especially with a 35-year mortgage. So basically, you end up going to the mortgage broker with the tiniest change in the amount that you have to pay. Sorry, tiniest change in interest rate, and you're back at 35. You're back at square one. And you know what the kicker is? Is that increase in interest rates? It means your property's gone down. So all that equity you probably built up is gone because fewer people can afford whatever the mortgage rate is that day. And even if you wanted to sell, you got to deal with realtor fees and all that other stuff, and moving fees. All right, so what about this rebound here? Right at the end, last 08, 09. Oh, how the heck did that happen? It climbs so high, and then suddenly falls, and then climbs so high again. What's the deal with that? I mean, the fall coincides with the whole removal of the 0 down 40-year mortgage. But what caused such a quick rebound like this? Well, here's what the Bank of Canada, remember Mark Carney? Here's what they did to the interest rate during pretty much that same period. It went from 3.5% all the way down to 0.25%. And immediately there's all these people, you know, who are not owning right now, and they're like put in a position where, holy smokes. We remember what I said, 1% change, 11% more affordable. Well, just imagine what this change did to people's ability to pay that monthly payment. It shot up. So of course people bought, and they were afraid because they knew if they get pre-approved, they can lock in for 90 days and then go searching, find the place they love, get that mortgage, and then they've made it. They got that status of being an owner, which is super. All right, here's a really cool thing that shows the number of sales that happened in BC over the last 9-10 years or whatever. What's wild about this is that you see right at the beginning, the number of sales aren't very high, which is right before interest rates dropped, income taxes dropped, and then demand shoots up. You can see the interest when like news came out that there's so few properties, so few homes are being built, all this kind of stuff, and demand stayed very high right up until 2008 when sales plummeted to below what they started at, and then they shot back up because it all of a sudden became way more affordable with interest rates being at the lowest they've basically like ever been. Okay, so what I want you guys to really do, obviously you guys aren't going to buy a home tomorrow, I'm hoping, or whatever, but when the time comes when you're out of school, when you got a job and all this kind of stuff, and you're very successful and you're married maybe, I don't know, whatever, and it comes to buying a home, just crunch the numbers to see if it makes sense, It's very simple calculation. You just look at your monthly mortgage payments, you look at your expenses, you look at your taxes, you look at all the insurance, all this kind of stuff, you put it over here, and then you put rent over here of a comparable unit, And remember, the amount of equity that you'd be building in a 35-year mortgage, that first payment is like 10%, less maybe. I don't know, it's ridiculous. So you're paying off interest anyway. So if you're paying way more over here buying the place as opposed to renting, I really hope that you don't buy the place and you instead rent, because you're saving money this way, And fluctuations like this, especially with interest rates the way they are, can like slaughter people, It's the 4.25 shooting up to 4.8, and then all of a sudden you're in a position where you got to renegotiate. And that's best case scenario, I think. Because that's just 0.65% difference. If historically interest rates are way higher than what they are now, and they're not going to get lower because they can't, then it's not a good idea to buy. So when it comes, do the calculation. Oh yeah, this house right here, it's a house in Vancouver that I got off MLS. It's like $500,000. Yeah, it's like 488 or something like that. It's like, whew. It wasn't the worst one either, but I thought, this picture's kind of terrible. All right, so yeah, here it is. What comes down must go up. Interest rates are ridiculously low. Taxes are low. I mean, if you're going to assume that the situation doesn't change over ever, when the government's over budget or whatever, and the Olympics are super expensive, so property taxes and all this kind of stuff. If you're going to assume that things aren't going to increase, then you're really setting yourself up for some serious trouble in the future. Now here's a warning. Danger, danger. My property might go down, I'm going to cut you. These are two people who just bought. So if you've learned anything in this presentation, and I really hope you have, and you want to share it to someone who just bought, this is a warning. Because people are very emotional during this process. Once they've bought, their hands are for a lot of people, it's kind of